Welcome to At Home with the Johnsons. With me, Lisa.
And me, Sam.
We're going to be discussing a load of different issues about having a multi-seven-figure business and what life is like. So we'll be talking life and we'll be talking a bit of business. But we'll also be talking some controversial topics, but we want you to get involved too.
Because we do love a debate.
We love a debate.
And if you want to get involved in the debate, you can join us on our Facebook group At Home with the Johnsons.
So on today's podcast, we're going to be talking about, I think the title is, Does ADHD Exist?
It's a good title. It's a bit clickbaity, isn't it? That?
It's a bit clickbaity.
It's very clickbaity.
And so I've obviously brought an expert in because that's what we do. So this is Kim. Kim Raine is the ADHD expert. She helps loads of my clients who have ADHD with all different things in the way they learn, making things more productive for them, all sorts of things. So, Kim, I won't start with the question, does ADHD exist? Because I think I know what you're going to say. But I'm going to start with a story.
Yeah, good.
Which I said on my Instagram this week. So, during Christmas and New Year, I had an operation. And so I was in the house and I wasn't able to get out. And I really wanted to get hair extensions. And so I spoke to somebody, found someone online who was like a celebrity hairdresser or so, they said. And I said, are you able to come and put hair extensions in? And they persuaded me to do it there and then. Like, yeah, we'll do it like next week. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll just do it. And they asked me to send them over 750 quid for the extensions, which I did. Straight into his bank account. I know, never give money to anyone that DMs you and tells you to. But I did because he was like a celebrity hairdresser. And then he was supposed to come on the 27th and he didn't turn up. And then when I texted him, he put, oh, can I come tomorrow? I'm under the weather. And I said, well, you'll have to now, won't you? And then he said, oh, I'll come at 5 o'clock tonight. Don't worry. So 5 o'clock came and went and he didn't come. And then he texted me and said, oh, please, can I come tomorrow? And I was like, fine, come tomorrow. He didn't turn up. And then he said, oh, sorry, I overslept. And then he gave me an excuse about his car. And then he said he'd come the next day. He didn't turn up. He never turned up. But his final excuse to me for the reason that he didn't turn up 4 times was, I have ADHD. And that's why I didn't turn up. And this grated on me. Like, I'll tell you why it grated. My bank gave me the money back, so all is good. But the reason it grated on me is because 7 clients in 2024 who did a whole course, finished the course, and then stopped paying for payments.
Yeah.
In their reasoning of why they weren't paying me anymore, it was because they had ADHD. And so I've started to see it as a nice, easy excuse to chuck out for anything. And so I want to talk to you about whether you believe that the amount of people that are saying they have ADHD, especially entrepreneurs, actually do. Or like, why is it... I don't really want to say why so many people suddenly got it, because I do understand that maybe people did have it and we just didn't have the knowledge.
Yeah.
But it feels like everyone is looking for a diagnosis of ADHD right now, and I don't really get why.
Okay. My first thing is I wish I'd asked you if I could swear on this podcast, because that really F's me off. I mean, and that's the thing, like, people doing stuff like that is causing some of the problems. You know, I imagine that person though would have had an excuse, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, some people are just like that, right? So
it's like giving him a new excuse to use.
Yeah, it's the latest excuse.
I think it's one that he feels a lot of people wouldn't dare to call him out on.
That's definitely what's happening with the people not paying. They're like, oh, well, she can't say anything about this.
And that's the thing. I mean, we have a problem with that is like, so you can imagine all my clients have ADHD. And so we have that sort of thing. But ultimately, I think that to go back to the question, you know, why are people seeking diagnosis? Are they doing it so that they can use an excuse? I think that I'm a great believer in diagnosis. I really do believe that it's worth doing.
Why?
Because what a diagnosis gives people is validation. So very often, for most of the people, and we know that most people seek an ADHD diagnosis do actually have ADHD in most cases. And what that diagnosis gives people is it gives them validation and it gives them an explanation. Now, there's always going to be people that are going to use it as an excuse. But what that does is gives them the opportunity to look at things a bit differently. You know, when I got my diagnosis, I knew I had ADHD. I'd known it.
How did you know?
I knew because once I knew, I knew.
Because lots of people tell me that they think I have ADHD. Lots of people. And when I say why, they give me some reason, some things that are ADHD, and they just seem like things that lots of people do or have.
Yeah.
Like, I keep seeing things like on the internet that say things like, just eating a whole packet of biscuits, tell me you've got ADHD without telling me. I eat a whole packet of biscuits all the time. Like, I feel like we could put things or we could put them down to other things.
Yeah, and so I think that's the whole thing, isn't it? It's like we've got so much information out there and there's the clickbait stuff. Yeah, let's do this, let's say those things. And I think that, you know, there are traits. I think the trouble is ADHD is personality traits magnified. So, you know, the other thing is everyone's a little bit ADHD. Well, no, everybody isn't ADHD, but a little bit ADHD. But we all have certain personality traits, and we're all forgetful sometimes. We're all emotionally, you know, dysregulated sometimes. We all have these moments, ADHD. But actually, if you have ADHD, you have this ongoing, and it is causing huge problems in your life. And I think as well, like I work with people that have got ADHD, and it's not a big deal for them. It's not a problem.
Well, I keep hearing people say
it gives them an explanation.
ADHD is a superpower, but the one person I know that 100% has it and has had it since she was a child says it is so far from being a superpower. It actually causes me so many problems.
I hear that expression a lot. How do you feel about that expression? Is it something you would say, or?
I would say it if I'm talking to a 5-year-old.
Okay.
You know, if a child is being diagnosed, brilliant. Like, tell them they've got a superpower. Fantastic.
Right.
But, you know, for me, I'm like 52 years old this year, and exactly as you've just said, I don't feel like I've got a superpower. Right. Some days I feel it's ADHD is really hard. And I think that's the other thing that, you know, gets lost, is that it is really hard. There are times, and, you know, you said, how did I know I had ADHD? I didn't know until I knew, but all my life I had walked around and I used to think, what's wrong with me? What is wrong with me? I knew something.
In relation to what? In specifics?
There were lots of places, there were so many times I couldn't keep up. Like, everyone just seemed to be able to do...
Conversationally?
Just with life. Everyone just seemed to do life very easily. And that didn't bother me until I had kids, to be honest, because it doesn't matter. Like, you're only worrying about yourself doing life, aren't you, until that point. And then if you have children, now I'm at the school gates with all these people that can do life. So their children are turning up every day. They're perfectly turned out. You know, they've got their Easter bonnets are amazing. They're this, that, and the other. They've got all the bits and pieces.
Like motherland.
Yeah, it is like that. And I'm like, holy cow, what is wrong with me? Why can't I keep up with these people? And then I would try so hard to keep up with those people. And what I didn't understand was I would burn out all the time. And I'm not talking big burnouts, I'm talking like these mini burnouts. So you know, my energy would just run out and I'd be exhausted, and I'd either be up here, like doing things, crash on the floor. And I'd be like, how are you all doing all of this?
What is the main traits then of ADHD? Is like exhaustion one?
It's one that's not really... So I always say, you know, I think ADHD should have a B in it for burnout, because...
Is that a big one?
It's huge, but it's all, you know, but again, burnout's one of those words, isn't it? That's like, oh, you're burnt out and that. But actually, it's that mismanagement of energy, you know, that high energy and the low energy. So going back to your hairdresser, you know, actually, when you are in that space, it is very difficult to feel the thought of coming to you, probably felt so overwhelming. What happens is the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that is like, that makes you an adult, you know, helps you plan things, helps you think, I've got a new client, I've got to go, I've got to do this and da. And you start thinking of that, the brain just goes, no, and you just almost can't see. Yeah. And there'd be this complete demotivation, complete shutdown, complete wanting to withdraw. And then comes, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? So when you're like, no, you've got ADHD and you have a diagnosis and you have that validation, you're like, oh, Kim, you just need to manage your ADHD better. And actually now I know, well, I can't keep up with you guys because of that. I understand that I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm just going to try and do a bit better and do things slightly differently. So I do believe in diagnosis. I think it gives you that validation and that explanation. But the excuse part of it, I think, some people are always going to make excuses, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think this instance, because of the nature of excuses.
Well, he'd already given 5.
Well, when he was due here at
It was just a new one.
1 p.m. and at 12 p.m. he texted to say, I overslept. That's why I won't be able to come today. You start to think that there's other contributory factors going on in this.
But we can. The thing is, as well, exactly that. Though, has that person then got? Now I've got this excuse, and like you say with the payments.
Yeah, because people say it because I really do believe that they think that people can't then make them do things. It's like, do you remember when everyone, trauma 5 years ago?
Yes.
Like, if you said that, well, I'm in therapy for trauma, no one could say anything. You couldn't say, well, you still have to pay your bills, it's still life. You weren't able to do that. That's what people are now doing, I see, from ADHD.
I think that's hugely dangerous to kind of, the cause makes it sound a bit wrong, but the cause of getting people to understand, to accept, to realise, to know the journey that people with ADHD are going through. And if you get people like that, it's massively harmful to that, where people are going to go, just because of one example like that.
But I would also say, so in my world, which is similar to your world, most of the people that I work with are not the people that are making it, they're the go-getters. And they've, actually ADHD has, because if I think about myself at the school gates, why can't I keep up with you? But in other workplaces, I was zooming ahead of them. And they would be looking at me and they'd be like, I can't think what I'd say, but I'd be like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And they'd be like, no, you're not. You can't do that.
But
and I'd be like, and I would do it.
Often
and they'd be like,
hyper-focus is a thing, isn't it?
The creativity and ideas. There's a couple of bands that I follow where the lead singer in one of them has actually just written a song, and it is called My Superpower, funnily enough. But he's talking about that and when he was at school, because no one understood it when he was at school.
Yes.
He was just seen as this crazy, out-of-control kid who had one idea 1 second, flitted off to the next idea in the next second, then wanted to write a song, then wanted to write a book, and they just thought, we can't control him. Whereas once he got the diagnosis, it started to slot into place. And he suffers with mental health, he suffers with anxiety and depression, with burnout, all those things.
Yeah.
And when going back to your point about getting a diagnosis, I think for him, using him as an example, that was a big catalyst in his life, where he could have all this stuff without people thinking,
because I suppose if you understand something and you can explain to other people, the reason I'm doing it's like with Finn and his Tourette's.
Yeah.
So if Finn sits down at a cinema or in a theatre, he'll say to the people next to him, I have Tourette's. You might be hearing me make some noises. There's nothing I can really do about it.
Yeah.
Because it gives him a way to be able to explain it and to say. So it's like that kind of diagnosis can really help people.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's the same with ADHD. Not only for themselves to go, well, now I get why I couldn't do those things. There's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
I just have a thing.
And very often what we're dealing with now as well is, yes, it's not necessarily overdiagnosis, but we're going back for all the misdiagnosis.
Okay.
So
why didn't we have diagnoses before?
I think we didn't understand. So there's a couple of simple things, like we didn't even diagnose ADHD in adults till 2008 in the UK. So we didn't even diagnose it in children till the year 2000.
Yeah, because growing up, my generation, your generation, it just wasn't. It just wasn't a thing.
No, there was autism, and it stopped there.
I don't even know if there was autism when I was a kid.
Autism was very prolific. If you had autism, you were, severely autistic.
Right, yeah.
You were maybe...
There was no spectrum, I suppose.
No, there was no spectrum. My first thing of autism was I shared an office with a lady and she worked with autistic children, and I remember coming in thinking, well, these are normal children.
Yeah.
It wasn't... And that's the thing, isn't it? And I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know.
But that's an educational...
Like, oh, wow.
The journey of education with autism is a few years ahead of ADHD, right? Or
Yeah.
I guess that I was aware of autism before I knew what ADHD was.
Yeah.
But it's still that process, I guess. And there is a spectrum. And person A compared to person B could be totally different in their personality.
Even in ADHD, I think there's a spectrum, isn't there?
Yeah,
I imagine so.
I think there's there's definitely a spectrum, but there is also things that exacerbate ADHD.
Are there?
So, without a doubt, lifestyle, modern life, the way we live nowadays, it's like pouring petrol on the stress.
Yeah.
Hugely exacerbates ADHD. Any sort of stress. If you're stressed, you can't think straight. You can't plan straight, because again, that part of the brain that we need to help us do all the things and be, human beings and make everything happen, goes offline because the amygdala, the part of your brain that's going, you're in danger, like danger, you're walking around in that fight or flight. You're not able to compute and think about stuff. So, and modern living is, we are constantly in this real state of
fight or flight. That's why we're all having to work on a nervous system.
So, question
Exactly.
I have a question that's just popped into my head.
Oh, hello. I'm nervous.
You know what I'm like, right? My brain, but from what you're saying, that makes total sense about today's world. Do you find, is there any data that in societies that are not so in the modern world, that are more relaxed, maybe even societies like some Scandinavian countries where the whole Higa thing is, they're very chill, is there less diagnoses of ADHD in those cultures than in more mad cultures like ours?
Well, yes, there's a lot less diagnosis, but is that because at the moment there's also less awareness? Because obviously we've got, it
would be interesting
US,
to know.
the UK, it is coming. We're getting students, so we train the coaches now, and we're getting students from those countries, but they're like the groundbreaking. They're like, well, it's hardly anyone's talking about it here, but it is here.
Yeah.
But I do also think, again, it is in the West, our lifestyle, not that that's not West, but our lifestyles, this need for more and being, I'm not doing enough. That's a huge ADHD thing. Like, I'm not, that hyperactivity drives us to good, but also to that feeling of I'm not doing enough. So you always feel, you get to the end of the day, it's like, I've not done enough.
I feel like that all the time.
Yeah.
Every day, like there's more to do.
Yeah.
And I
but I would, you know that I've said to you, I wouldn't be surprised if you do have ADHD, but it's also, your attitude and what you decide to do with that. Does it matter to you?
No.
And that's why, if I look at it for me, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got ADHD, no big deal. I work with people who have the trauma of living with undiagnosed ADHD. And, it's very much, we're all neurodiverse, right? We're all made up by the beliefs and the situations we've been in, the stories we've lived through. And I think then if and you're a really resilient person. I know that. I know your story and I know everything that you do. And you it's just, I can't imagine you needing.
I wouldn't need it. If I do have it now, I definitely don't think it stops me or hinders me in any way or makes me feel traumatic.
But can I ask you a question then? So now I don't think you need those things, but actually if you are, do you think it could have helped you in the past with some of the stuff that you've been through to maybe have an understanding?
No, I think it would have made me, I think I wouldn't have done everything I've done. I think it would have given me a really good reason not to.
Really?
Yeah. Sometimes we need an excuse because things are hard. Life is hard. And if I could have given myself you won't be able to. I remember when I first started in business, I would look for any reason why they could do it and not me. Well, they're doing it because they're a size 6 and I'm a size 16. Of course they can do it and I can't. They're doing it. The reason they've done really well is because they don't have kids. The reason they've done well is they don't have a chronic disease like I do. If somebody had given me ADHD, great. Now I really don't
Can I
have to
play
do
devil's advocate a bit?
Yeah.
I think you still would have achieved it because those other excuses didn't stop you.
That is true.
Yeah.
But
so
I wanted
think,
to find
Kim
excuses.
rightly said, you are a very, very determined, dare I say, stubborn, resourceful person.
And I would say a lot of the people that I work with who are high achieving, predominantly like women, those born female for me, but they are all of those things and their drive is insatiable. Yeah. And I guess what I'm saying to you sometimes is, sometimes you push and push and push and that's relentless. And I've been there, and you go, oh my God, I just want to slow down. Like I used to drive past the pub and see my mates out and having a good time on a sunny afternoon. And I'd be like, I wish I could just go and sit there, but I'm so driven.
But you can't do
on
it.
this purpose
I get
that I can't do that. And that's that hyperactivity. Yeah. That is, people think the hyperactivity is like fidgeting and throwing stuff, but it's that cognitive internal drive that never lets it be enough, that gets us to amazing places. Like I say, my clients what they achieve is phenomenal. And I would say, yes, in spite of, but sometimes because of, it's given them a helping hand to get to where they've got. And this is the other thing with ADHD, working memory can sometimes forget what you say because I can't remember where I was going with that. But that internal hyperactivity, I think, drives a lot of entrepreneurs to it never be enough and to push that bit extra
and
further.
I guess coupled with that questioning side of personality, the ideas side of personality, the creative side of personality that often comes with ADHD.
Yeah.
So those two coupled together is like a perfect storm in a good way and a bad way, I guess.
Exactly. And that, it's paradox, isn't it? There's all those things you can be, you know, so if we take it as an entrepreneur, you're always going to have, if something doesn't work, man, I know if you have an idea and it doesn't work, Lisa, I know you've got another 20 ideas behind that and you'll bounce back. But if you've got an idea and then another idea comes and another idea, this is what I see with a lot of entrepreneurs. It'd be like, I've got this idea, and they'll go halfway through it, and what we do is we get bored easily, we lose motivation. When it comes to tying up the loose ends, the dopamine, the excitement's at the beginning, right, of the project. You have to be there to tie up the loose ends. And with a lot of entrepreneurs or people, it's like, oh yeah, this is
they're
getting
starters,
a bit boring.
but they're not starter finishers.
Exactly. And now, now this has come along. Now this has come along.
It's
That's me though. I'm a starter and not a finisher.
Yeah.
I'm a great ideas man.
But I think that's me. But now I know I've got ADHD. I know that I have to make myself finish, and it's given me that understanding of like, oh, okay, Kim, I can see my flaws. Having a diagnosis has helped me see those flaws a bit more clearly.
I've had quite a lot of nervous system help.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that's helped me. I lived on dopamine.
Yeah.
Like I literally lived on dopamine. That is what got me through every day.
And I know that at times your nervous system has been frazzled. Yeah. And that's something, again, lots of the people that I work with, that's how I got into working with ADHD. Is I was working with people who were burning out, who were, just because from overachieving, they were burnt out, and then everything that comes with that. And what comes with that is confidence issues, anxiety, overwhelm. And for some people, they push through it and other people don't. And, I think that there's a part, we were having a conversation earlier, weren't we, about like, as you get older, right, I think you have more of like, do you know what, I am enough. I'm okay with this. But I think when you're younger, it's very different. Now, as you get older, particularly as a female with ADHD, your hormones and your menopause and things start to kick in, and that can make that really chaotic. And I think there's more burnout. When you're young, I think if you know how to harness ADHD, I think it's not a superpower, I wouldn't say that, but I think it's something you could really...
Because I suppose even in the last few years, I've learned a bit more. If you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said ADHD is someone sitting there, can't sit still, constantly flitting about, not paying attention, brain's doing one thing while they're listening to another.
Hyper people.
Which is exactly, that's how I would have pictured somebody with ADHD. And obviously learning now from people like you and just, social media in general, there's a lot more to it than that. But do you feel that hyperactivity still plays a part? Because you touched on it earlier, not necessarily physically, but in the activity within your brain.
100%. Right. So one thing that has changed, and I think this is also leading to a lot more diagnoses, is we used to have ADHD and we had ADD.
Yeah.
Yes.
And ADD was basically there was no hyperactivity. Right. So you still had the attention deficit disorder. What we don't have that now. We have inattentive ADHD and predominantly inattentive ADHD and ADHD. And what we know is with the inattentive part, that hyperactivity is there. It's just internal. It's just more cognitive. And generalization here, but that tends to be more in those born female, women and girls particularly, tend to have that more inattentive type. Now, we're seeing more men that are now like, oh, okay. Boys tend to be more hyperactive because generally they are, and then as they grow older, a lot of that hyperactivity comes in because as well, you have to sit at a desk, you have to work, you have to adult again. And so you can't just suddenly sit there and do a cartwheel or...
Well, let's talk about ADHD in kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, generalisation.
Yeah.
Lots of people I know who have what you would class normally as naughty kids.
Yeah.
So like if we're in a restaurant and they're just like smashing.
Not normally, as in historically.
Yeah.
Culturally.
We would see someone that just smash a plate off the table, or just kids, you tell it to sit down 15 times, it doesn't sit down.
Yeah.
Now, 100% near enough of the time, the parents will say it's because he's got ADHD.
Yeah.
Do you think there are naughty kids?
I'm glad you asked that one, because I thought you were going to make me ask that one. So I'm quite chuffed that I didn't.
I know you want to know.
Can I just add to it?
Yeah.
With naughty kids, let's say, I'm doing that while I say it, all right?
And people would say there are no naughty kids.
No,
but
exactly.
Kids that are misbehaving at the time.
Yeah.
Because surely there must be kids who are a product of their environment, where they grow up with a father or parents or siblings, or an environment that is lacking in moral guidance, shall we say, would turn into a kid with those traits without having ADHD.
And that's the problem, isn't it? So that child that's misbehaving in the restaurant, if you've got a child with ADHD, you know that you're going to take them in a restaurant, they're going to probably struggle to sit still. They're maybe going to... So, first of all, why are you putting them in that position? And if you are putting that in position, what have you got there for them? Like, ADHD is about interest-driven brain. So how can we keep them engaged? If that child was interested in something that was going on at the table, or there was a conversation, or you'd bought a particular something to keep them amused, they probably wouldn't be jumping up and down. And that is the thing, isn't it? There still has to be, just because you've got ADHD, do I think some children are just naughty? Yeah. You know, God, I'm an adult and sometimes I'm naughty, and that's got nothing to do with my ADHD. You just want to be naughty sometimes, don't you? Yeah. So I think that 100% yes, but I still think that, you know, it's about respect, isn't it? Just because your child's got ADHD, or whatever, there's a difference between... You need to teach, every child needs to be taught how to behave. Yeah.
And I worry that some kids are just misbehaving because, let's say, a parent hasn't parented that well.
Yeah.
But nowadays, instead of needing to parent, the parent's going, well, it's not our fault, he's got ADHD.
Yeah.
And I think your point, Kim, is a good one. Let's say your child has been diagnosed. That doesn't mean you just sit back and go, well, they've got ADHD, they can do whatever they want to in this restaurant.
But what do you do then? Like, is there medication? What is there?
Well, I think, so as I was saying that, you know, I was looking back at, because I've got ADHD. So ADHD, highly hereditary. We know that it's as heritable as eye colour. So, you know, ADHD is in my family. There was me, undiagnosed ADHD mum, raising my undiagnosed ADHD daughter. So ADHD is if you've got autism and ADHD, very, very common, and a winner combination. Yeah. I mean, that's really exciting stuff. And sometimes it was really challenging. But I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know how to... So when if she was misbehaving, what happens to me? So my ADHD kicks in, right? I'm embarrassed. Right. I feel judged. I don't know what to do. I actually think... I don't understand why she can't behave. Like,
so both of you are going through it at the same time.
And because ADHD isn't a deficit of attention, you know, we feel and hear anything. So she's then picking up on my vibes, and between the pair of us, it was, you know, fireworks, absolutely fire. And I look back now and I think, I mean, that is where my part of, I always say, you know, there for many people is a bit of a grief cycle when you get diagnosed of like, if things could have been different, if only that.
And you got diagnosed because she got diagnosed.
Yeah, I got diagnosed. I was reading it out to my husband and I said, oh my God, listen to all this. Because I'd always known, oh my God, this is terrible. This is awful. But this is where it's like, right, I'd always known that there was something wrong and something right with her. Never thought it was my problem.
It was about you.
Do you know what I mean? And that's the problem. I think a lot of parents think, what's wrong with my child? And I remember saying to my husband, you know, later on, as a, you know, ADHD or not, but as she grew up, I was like, do you know what? I wish that I always was trying to sort her out. And I actually realise now I should have been sorting me out.
But that happens so much. Like most of the women I know, especially, that have been diagnosed with ADHD, it's through their diagnosis of their kids. Yeah. Because they didn't think it could affect adults. Yeah. Because we didn't know that.
No. And I always knew that something wasn't right. I always knew she struggled. I always knew she had challenges. I always knew I had challenges, but I kind of like, I was kind of sort of done and I was all right. For my daughter, it was really difficult and life was difficult for her. And I tried everything, Lisa. I went to, you know, like hypnotherapy. Like, you know, my back, I'm quite holistic. I like to find things. We did all of the things and there were never any answers. And she wasn't a naughty girl. She was not a naughty child. She was a child who was easily triggered by sensory stuff. If we were all said we're going to go for a pizza, and then someone went, oh, do you know, let's have a curry. Oh my goodness me, that to her, changing that, and we might be, I've got ADHD, I like loads of people, let's have lots of people. For her, she was constantly put in these environments, and I would look for these, and I didn't know. And I think that's a lot of women and parents, like, they didn't know,
so
but
it
now
should
we do
change
know.
now. So like the next generation, they're going to be on the lookout, they're going to know what to look for.
Yeah.
And so there will be more. Well, my doctor said that they don't even have time to diagnose the amount of people that are trying to get diagnosis right now. Well,
yeah, so I spoke at the ADHD 360 conference last year, and the founder, Phil, he stood on the stage, and that week they work with the NHS, so they get referrals from the NHS. They'd had 1,000 referrals that week, and he said on average they were getting at least 1,000 a month. And that's one provider. That's not the NHS as well. We know that the NHS, I think the BBC did a report and said, in order for the NHS to deal with all of the backlog they've got, it would take 8 years.
Wow.
I know. Yeah. So I also think, yes, I do believe in diagnosis. I think it's really valid, and I think it's really good. But at the end of the day, we need to get on with implementing the things
without the diagnosis.
And don't wait for the diagnosis. You know, just think, what can I be doing to help myself? And I think with children as well, you know, we've got to be guiding them, and whether they've got ADHD or not, how can we help them and how can we make them feel safe? Because if they feel safe and we're looking at those sorts of things, then we can have much better outcomes for them.
Going back to something you said a minute ago about diagnosis and how it's a positive thing, because for a number of reasons that you touched on earlier, is there, coming from quite a naive point of view, is there treatment? Is there medicine? Is there things that can, I'm sure everyone's different in this, but once you're diagnosed, when I get a diagnosis, I'm like, right, what's the cure?
Yeah, what do
you
know?
Like if I go to the doctor and I don't know, I had my prostate cancer, what's the cure? You take the prostate out. You know, so that's my question.
Yeah, I think, and that's a really good question, because I also think that a lot of these people that are waiting for diagnosis think that that's what they're going to get. Yeah. You know, that they're going to be like, okay, you've got ADHD, take these tablets, or your child's got ADHD, everything's going to be hunky-dory, tickety-boo. It isn't. No. It isn't. And even, so there's medication that may or may not work for some people, doesn't work for everybody. You know, you might have to go on a journey to get it. And to find the right one for you. Last year, the whole country, half the world ran out of ADHD medication. Really? You couldn't get it for love nor money. So people that had been relying on it was suddenly taken away from them. Right. And also, medication can be part of a treatment, but you have to, again, have that agency. It's like, okay, so how are you living your lifestyle? What are you doing that's fueling these things? So I believe, you know, a lot of people, they get a diagnosis, you've got ADHD, do you want to try medication? And that's a yes or a no. You either do or you don't. If you do, there you go, off you go. Or you don't and you get on with it. For me, I think the most important thing is education. Yeah. So it's like, you've got ADHD, now go and learn about it. And that gives you things like, again, it's like what I said about, did I say to you about putting the glasses on? It's like suddenly like, oh my goodness me, okay, now I see that I'm trying to do it this way. But if I do it that way, that's going to work for me. And I think when we educate people, we understand ourselves better. So we're not as hard, you know, suddenly it's not stupid me, it's like, oh, stupid ADHD. Mm-hmm. And also we can start to find the strategies that work. And, you know, for me, it comes from working with coaches.
It's one of the problems with the diagnosis side is that there's money to be made. Mm-hmm. There's money to be made in ADHD. Are you seeing this as an issue?
Oh my goodness me, yeah. I mean, I've just watched a whole we know marketing, okay, and like you say, there's clickbait in it, and I love marketing. You know, if I see something that's like, well, if I do it this way, then that's gonna, you know, bring me more leads, more clients, and so I all for that. But there is a whole industry that's come up from ADHD, and I see it in the marketing space.
They're just sticking ADHD in front of what they already did before, doing nothing different.
Yeah,
you're seeing it everywhere.
And there's ADHD, this, that, and that, and I'm like, you know, so I see that. We know that there's a whole industry. There's, you know, supplements and all sorts of stuff. I see a lot of coaches that have ADHD or people that are running like you say, anything. They are now an ADHD X, Y, and Z. But that's because they've got ADHD, not because they're trained in ADHD. So then someone's going to work with that person thinking they're going to get, understanding. Well, ADHD is, like we said, it's a spectrum. It's different for everybody.
Just because you have it doesn't mean you know exactly how that other person's going to feel.
And so if you're gonna do that, then go and train yourself as to what ADHD is different might be different for you to what it is to me, because still it's based on who you are as a person and everything you've been through. So I'm seeing a lot of people, and what is available is there is funding available via Access to Work for people in the workplace and entrepreneurs to get support at work. So
in other words, I have a course. If I was to rename that course and say it's the same course, but it's for people with ADHD, I could then go and get a grant and get some money. The people could get grants to come which will give me
to do it. So they're then getting funded to do it. So then what we're seeing is people, and with ADHD, one of the things is impulsivity. Some of these people, they might be given, say, £1,500, and they'll go and they'll be like, I've always wanted to work with Sam. I'm going to work with Sam. And Sam's like, oh, well, now I'm, an ADHD copywriter. Oh, brilliant. I give Sam and actually they're coming back. They've burnt through that opportunity that they've had to invest in their business with somebody that actually has ADHD, so unmanaged ADHD. So they're on the coattails of their own stuff. I mean, I've heard some real horror stories in the coaching space.
There are actual things you can do as a provider, not for grants, but just to make things easier. So one of the things we're doing this year, our whole plan this year, last year we did Run to One-to-Many, flagship course, and we said it's the last year we're going to do it live. Yeah. I was then inundated by people with ADHD saying, if you do this live, we won't do it. If you don't do it live, we won't do it.
Oh, yes.
I had no idea. So they were like, if it's recorded, we just won't turn up. If you turn up, we'll turn up. It's a massive thing for us. So now we are doing it live because of that.
And I love One-to-Many. I send lots of people that way. And if it was self-paced, I wouldn't, for that very reason.
Yeah, who knew?
But
And people
we didn't
say
know,
to us,
did we?
No.
It's only when people told us, well, I would go.
Because there's lots that you can do to make it more friendly and viable.
So that educational piece is important, even outside of the obvious things, because that to me, that's not an obvious thing. No. But we've learned it now. So
and the engagement, you'll get more people finishing it, better results.
Oh yeah, from a practical point of view, more people are likely to give you a good testimonial, that kind of thing. So we all want that as well. It'd
be nice to put it on the thing, but no,
it won't work. So how do you help people in the ADHD space?
So I was working as a coach, and now I'm training the coaches. So we have got ICF accredited ADHD coaching certifications, because I was seeing so many people. Well, when I was working with you, I wrote the book. I wrote Square Pegs, a book of self-discovery for women with ADHD, and I got inundated with people wanting to work with me, and I didn't at that point I couldn't do it all myself. I didn't have anyone to refer to apart from these people that are like, I'm an ADHD, and I was thinking, but I know you're not trained, and I can't refer to that. So we now have got accredited, and we're training those people to go and work, and we're training people from, accountants and people in business strategies. We train, we work with quite a few people that have done the business strategy certification, which is such a good combination.
Yeah, because then you've got both.
Yeah, because actually there's so much good there. The hyperactivity, that drive, that hyper focus, all of those things are amazing. But there needs to be some strategy and guidance for a lot of ADHDers. So if you've got someone that understands business and you've got someone that understands ADHD, that really is a winning combination. So that's what we're doing at the moment.
Brilliant. We will put your links in the show notes so that
thank you very much.
If you have some people that want to be trained so that they can work with more people that have ADHD, they can go and do that.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening. If I'd love you to come in to the Facebook group at Home with the Johnsons and talk to me. I suspect that many of you listening either have already got a diagnosis, or you've just been listening to that thinking, hold on a minute. Few of those things make sense. So come in and tell us, and let's have a conversation about it. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
You've been listening to At Home with the Johnsons.
Why not come and join the discussion at our Facebook group at Home with the Johnsons?
Go and check the link in the show notes.